Let's go. Well, Rylan, you want to kick us off, brother? Sweet, man. Let's hit these properties, baby.
All right, let's do it. What state you guys are, or Ajay, what state you want to hit?
Shoot, man. I love Oklahoma. I've done some deals out there.
All right, let's pull one up. Let's just zoom into something random and big out here.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Let's do this random one. Okay. So actually that has a house on it. Let's choose something that's land. Let's choose this one. All right. So let's say Mr. Mark Conrad Hart, he called up your Pat Live, or he called up your personal cell phone if maybe you're newer to the business, and you made an offer or you made a neutral offer. So let's say you made an offer, they called your Pat Live, you got some notes from that Pat Live, and you're looking at the deal for the first time. It just got into your CRM. Okay. So Mark Conrad Hart hit you up. He saw your letter, or maybe he saw a text message, whatever. Hit you up, says, hey, I'm interested in selling. I like the offer you had, or maybe he has a counter offer, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it up in here. What we have in our CRM is we have all the contacts imported into our CRM, and you can search by just the property link itself. So just pull up that link associated with the property, and you're going to dive in here and you're going to do your preliminary research. What I always like to do is I just go straight to comp property. And what I'm doing here is I'm just making sure we're on the same page as this guy that called. We're making sure we made a decent offer, and it's in the ballpark of what an accurate offer is. Sometimes we mess up with mail. Sometimes we misprice it. We want to catch that before we make this call so that we avoid over offering, and we start off on the same page. Because if we say, hey, we can make this offer that we offered you in the mail and you haven't even looked at this deal yet, it might be the case that you overprice it, and it's more common than you think. So you want to catch that on the front end, because the more you switch up on your seller, the less they trust you, right? So it's like this first part of the due diligence is very important. We also want to make sure it's a property that we like. If it's covered in trash, or maybe it's like a waste management property, there's like an actual landfill on it or something, we want to catch that before we waste time talking with this guy. So we always want to look at the property first, but we don't want to spend too much time on it. So I'm going to show you just like the quick and brief 3-minute comp that I'll do before calling this person. So Mark Conrad right here lives out of zip county or state, not an HOA, property has no structure, purchased more than 5 years ago. This is good for us. There's a reason why he probably reached out. He's owned it for more than 5 years. Most of our sellers owned it for more than 5 years. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure our layers are on. I'm looking at wetlands. I'm looking at rivers and all that stuff. I'm looking at flood zones. We're in Oklahoma. We all know Oklahoma's super freaking flat. We don't need to look at slope on here. We know this is a flat property. If you want to, you can just click control. You can look at it in 3D. It's very accurate. Or you can pull up your contour lines and see how flat it is. As we can see here, it's very freaking flat. Okay, we can also look at land use. This is vacant land. Next to it's ag, residential land. So this is just vacant. It's probably zoned agriculture because we can see they're doing some type of farming. So what I'm going to do, like I see on here that he's farming it. I'm going to ask him, hey, are you farming it yourself, or are you leasing it to a farmer? That's very important, because generally if they're leasing it, it's a 1-year lease that they can renew. So we want to know when that date is, because that affects when we can close on the property. That affects everything. So if they're in the middle of harvesting, that could be good. That could mean we could drop that lease early, or if there's a hard stop on that lease, we need to know when that date is so we can push out our closing date to that time. Because in some cases we'll list a property. Let's say it's a double close. We'll list a property while it's being farmed with the intentions of selling it when that lease ends. So that's one thing we want to look at. We want to take note. This guy is farming it. He's either farming it himself or he is leasing it, right? We also want to go in here and we want to look at all the other properties he owns. So we're going to go back. This property is off 44. Okay, so what looks to be the case is he lives around here. We can see the address. Owner mailing address is Heather Lane, Chandler, Oklahoma. It looks like he doesn't necessarily live there. Maybe. Let's see. Where'd it go? Right here. So I don't know if he's living here or maybe he's got like a little cabin going on here, but this looks like a full farming complex. Generally, these people won't hit us up. This is just a hypothetical. Generally, this isn't going to happen. Generally, it's going to be a one-off piece of property. Sometimes people want to sell part of their farmland, but for the most part, especially in Oklahoma, they want to hold on to that. But
I ask you if you're from China.
yeah, they might ask you if you're from China.
When Oklahoma legalized marijuana growth, all of a sudden a bunch of Chinese investors came in. So like when I take cold call leads in Oklahoma, I swear probably like 1 out of 10 will ask me like, are you guys the Chinese or are you going to sell to the Chinese? Like it's an absurd amount, I feel like.
Yeah. What's actually crazy, like I read an article on this. I didn't actually look into it myself, but China's buying up all the land around like strategic Air Force bases and military bases.
I saw that.
It's insane.
That's wild.
I don't know what their strategy is with that. Maybe it's just for spying. I don't know.
Man, to be honest, I don't want to know their strategy. I'm a loose sleep about it if I do. Like I'd rather turn a blind eye and let the military deal with it.
Yeah.
They got deeper pockets than I do, so I can't do much about it anyways.
But guys, just do me a favor. Don't do any treason and sell to a Chinese investor, even if they offer you an offer you can't resist. All right. Okay, let's get back into it. So I'm just gonna like another thing I'm gonna bring up on the call is say, hey, I see you own other pieces of land right next to it. Generally, like if somebody owns a piece next to it, they probably want to sell that too. But we just want to clear that up. We want to know, and we want to come into the call prepared, saying, hey, we also see you own a property next to it. Do you want to sell that as well? I know we made an offer on one of them. What are your thoughts on that? Okay, so we're gonna quickly comp it. I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't see any flood zones, wetlands. It's flat. This is a buildable piece. I don't see anything wrong with it. This is a great piece of land. Okay, so this is 60 acres. I'm gonna set my range probably like 50 to 80 acres. So I want to look at comps in that range. And what I'm immediately going to do is I'm going to start looking around. So this is listed at 7,700 per acre. That's been on the market for over 281 days. This sold at 7,500. This sold at 4K. This is listed at 7K. This is listed at 6,800. This is listed at 5,400 an acre. There's a lot listed at 5,400 an acre up here. So there's a massive inventory.
Wow.
And I'm seeing stuff sell anywhere from 3,500 an acre to 7,500 an acre. So honestly, considering all of these listings at 5,400 an acre, you can go look at these yourself if you want. I'm seeing consistencies. So I'm not even going to look at it because there's so many consistent listings at like 5K an acre. I'm thinking this property is probably going to sell at 4,500 an acre. That's my guess, front end. So if you overprice, let's say you offered 4,500 an acre, you need to come in prepared, and you need to set that straight on that call. Obviously, like the first call, you want to build rapport and everything, and say like, hey, what did you think about our offer? I wouldn't bring up the offer on this first call, but I would bring it up on the second call after we talked with our team. I always say like, oh, we talked with our team, but we know what we can offer or not. I like to make that change, and I like to make that negotiation on the second call. I don't like to do it on the first. But anyways, like you want to take notes, and you can take notes in here at the bottom. Say worth 4,500 per acre, in my opinion. Need to renegotiate the offered 4,500 per acre. Okay, like if we offer 4,500 an acre, we just want to take note of that, right? So that's our preliminary due diligence. That's basically all I'm doing. Everything checked out with the property. I'm seeing consistent listings at 5,400 an acre. I think it's worth 4,500 an acre. So we need to make an offer that's competitive. What I can quickly do is I can go click on one of these that's at 4,500 an acre. I'm just going to select it, and immediately it's going to say the land is worth 271,000. So that's what we think it's worth. If we want to go do a little calculation, if we want to offer 50% of that, that's going to be an offer of this amount. If we want to do a range offer, we can also adjust this. This is generally what I'm offering in a range for texting, is about 40 to 60%. Sometimes it's 50 to 70%. And you can also bake in all the expenses associated with that. If you plan on listing with a realtor, you can bake in that expense. You can also bake in your closing costs. So I generally give away 6% to realtors that sell it because I list everything with realtors. Closing costs, generally like 3K to 5K is what we're looking at. If there's any other closing costs, you can always add that in there as well. But if we offered 50%, so if we offered 135,000, we can expect our profit to be this amount after all of these expenses. Okay. So we don't take into account the range offer here. We're just taking into account that 50%. So that's like your notes. Like if you want to offer on the call, like I like to go off of this. So anyways, that's our preparation. So going into that call, this is the most important call in my opinion, is building that rapport and setting things off straight in the beginning. So I'm going to pass it over to Ajay. Ajay, you can kind of go over what you're talking to this guy about with his land, and I guess we'll go from there. And then I'll jump in and say anything I have that maybe contradicts that.
No, I love it. I love it. So I'll say, number one, at a high level, guys, how cool is Land Insights? Like, drop in the chat if your mind is totally blown. If you're not an active user, the functionality in this just like speeds up pretty much everything you do in this business. It is awesome. You guys just keep adding features, which blows my mind. But I would tell you, I'd start very similarly in the sense of I'd come in, look at comps, and look for disqualifiers. So like my philosophy on before I get on the phone with the seller is always, what are my fastest deal killers, and just make sure those don't exist, right? So we're going to turn on our layers, double check for floodplains and wetlands, right? We're going to double check topography. We're going to make sure there's not a crazy HOA. Thankfully, Land Insights tells us all that stuff, so you figure it out pretty quick. I would say you should get done with your quick DD no longer than it took you on prom night. All right, so 3 to 5 minutes tops, and then we're in and out on DD pretty quick. I'm sorry. I usually say that in smaller circles, so this was a big one. Sorry if you got kids. But the point being, you want to be through your due diligence as fast as possible so that you can jump on the phone with your folks, right? The nice thing about the smart comp is you do have that range pretty quickly, where a lot of times I know I'm going to come in, and it really depends what your process is set up in. I think, Rylan, you alluded to a 2-call close, right? So Call number one is very much what I like to say is we're focused 80% on the property, 20% on the person, whereas call number two would be 80% on the person, 20% on the property, where my goal is really to close that deal, okay? So call one is really just qualification, which I mentioned on our first webinar of, hey, I'm trying to make sure I would buy this property and this person would sell, and ideally I get an asking price out of them. With us having already done marketing in this example of like, we know about where they are on price and I know I need to renegotiate, I need to come in with some level of what I would call ammunition, meaning what's something about the property that's undesirable at any level, right? So that when we come in with renegotiation, we need to know some line item that would hurt the value, whether it's obvious or not. Hey, I thought the road was paved when we first looked at it and it came back dirt or gravel. Hey, I didn't realize that you had an active farm lease on this property, and typically, like, I don't know, we don't like buying properties that are actively being farmed because it changes the soil on it or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, there's different things you can do. You guys have pesticides on the property naturally. Oh, well, I'm super granola and I don't want that on my, like whatever way you want to put it. But I need something to renegotiate them with. So I'm going to look for some piece of that ammunition before I get on the phone with them. Kyle, I see your question. First call is 80% about the property. So think we're trying to disqualify the property, right? Eliminate it out of my pipeline if it's no good, or I'm trying to qualify the property if it's one that I would buy, right? So I'm going to go through quick qualification. What are all my deal killers? Second call is 80% about the person. So you've got those flip-flopped right now in the chat. Where I'm really, if in the conversation where I'm talking price, I want as much of a relationship with the human I'm talking to as possible, right? So that's a lot of my focus there. But Rylan, I do a lot of the same things you did, man, in terms of just like double checking price, double checking a quick due diligence check. And then if it were me specifically getting on the phone with them, I would one call close them. In any of our, businesses, though, it's always a two call close, in the sense of you have a lot of people whose primary job is to qualify and they get really good at qualification. And then it goes over to a closer whose job is to close, right? Yeah. So on that second phone call is really where we're going to start having a conversation around price. But one of my favorite expressions is like, you got to earn the right to talk about price. So rather than talking about it early in the conversation, I'm going to wait 4 to 10 minutes before actually bringing up price for the first time and begin to get into it. Now we can talk a whole conversation about pricing. Anything in that you want to touch on first though, Rylan?
In terms of price?
Just in terms of like overall process?
Yeah, so my strategy is a little bit different. Our team, I'd say we're probably like 50-50. So 50% property, 50% person.
Okay.
Because what we like to do, and this is how our business is structured, is we have our lead manager who makes that first phone call, asks all the questions, tries to get to know the person, and then we have the closer that goes in on the second call and actually closes it.
Okay.
So like we have this kind of hierarchy where it's like, okay, you're talking to somebody who's kind of vetting you, and then you get the upgrade and you're talking to like the highest person at the company.
Right.
So that's like they get the really, really good treatment, I guess. And like we have a good kind of transition into that person. So like on that first call, at the end of the call, our lead manager is saying like, hey, I'm passing this off to the higher ups at my team, and somebody higher up at the company is actually going to call you back with a finalized offer at that point. So we kind of have a transition where it's like we're a big company that creates rapport and we can push into that. But basically, like in terms of what we're asking the person, I'm going to want to hear this from you as well, Ajay. But what we're asking about the person is, first of all, like where do they live? Are they living near the property? Are they using it? I see you're farming it. Is this a lease that you're giving up? Or are you farming it yourself? Then you can go into like the farming talk, like, oh, that's super cool. You're farming a lot of land. Question for you. I see on the map, there's a lot of vegetation in the back that's not being farmed. Do you know why that's not being farmed? That could lead into a negotiation point. You could maybe say, oh, there's bad soil in the back. It's not fertile. Or maybe there's like something we don't know about back there. That could lead in a negotiation point. The problem with this property that I see is it's like perfect. There's really not a lot of negotiation we can go off. And like we need to come up with something, And like Ajay said, and I agree with Ajay, you always need something to go off of when you negotiate price. Because you sent an offer and they're going to be like, they're either going to say, if you negotiate without any thing to negotiate off of, he's going to think either you're just a horrible business owner, and maybe you're just making bad offers left and right, and maybe you're trying to scam by baiting. It's like you need to have something to go off of to lower that price. Otherwise, you sound like a scammer, or you sound like you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
It's not legitimate. So with this, it's like I can't find much to go off of. There's power lines right here. So there's power. It's cleared, it's flat. One thing I could say is, hey, we were targeting properties that look like this, more square, and this one's a little skinny. Ideally, we don't like to work with properties that are that shape. Another thing we can go off of is, hey, we noticed there isn't city water lines going along this. So on that call, you're going to want to ask, hey, are there city water lines, or do I have to drill a well out here?
Right.
So we can say, hey, like it's going to cost us at least 15 grand to drill a well here. You can look into well depths in the area if you want to. You can look up like I think it's the USGS well database. You can see like how deep the wells are in the area, and you can do a little ChatGPT calculation of how that's going to cost. So you can say like, hey, it's 500 feet to drill wells out here for domestic wells. I did the math. It's going to cost us whatever, 40 grand to do that. So I need to drop my price. My thought of this property was that there were city water lines on this road, which there aren't. And our offer baked that in. So we have to go back on price. So it's like, you want to start thinking about that stuff and you want to start asking questions. Now, in terms of people, or the people questions, or getting to know the people, where are you living? What are you doing? Why do you want to sell? How did you get this property? Was it passed down to you, or did you buy it back in the day? We can also see data on that. So he bought this 24 years ago, but it's not showing a purchase price. So I forget, Ajay, is Oklahoma non-disclosure?
No, they disclose.
Okay. So it just, we didn't have the deed information, so we don't see the price he bought it at, but we can see it was purchased 24 years ago, or at least transitioned 24 years ago.
Is it possible he inherited it 24 years ago?
So we can see the previous owner, Harry Townsend. So I don't know if he's related. Maybe he is. Who knows?
I would guess no, though. That's a good point.
Yeah. I'm assuming he bought it. So we just want to ask, like, hey, why did you buy it? What have you done with it? We obviously know he's farming it. So just getting to know why he wants to sell it. And you want to take note of that. It's very important you take notes on why they want to sell, so you can hit on that in negotiation if needed. Because a lot of negotiation is just understanding the seller and understanding why they want to sell it, and just trying to ask as many questions as possible about what their goal is with that money. What are they going to do with that money when they sell it? Because that can all transition into how you pitch your offer.
Totally. Yeah, I will add too on that note, Rylan. So like, when we're thinking about like motivation from a seller, people want it like to be low-hanging fruit, and it's not exactly how it is. Like, so much of what we do as a good closer is actually educating the prospect on what they would do with the money. Like, they don't even know yet, you know? And that's where we need to be good salespeople. And we actually come in, and I think I broke down the cold, warm, hot framework on our last session, or our last webinar we did on Tuesday. But essentially, so much of our job is education, where a salesperson's job is to help people make decisions, right? So regardless of, you know, where we are in the process, it's really a function of like, hey, they don't know if they want to sell or not. I might need to spend 20 minutes like leading them to a place where they agree to sell the property. And I'll do that. Like, I think the best closers are so patient with their leads when it comes to like, you know, you get on the phone, they're like, well, I never said I wanted to sell, right? And most people would be like, it's a trash lead. Whereas like, I've streamed me calling sellers where they start like that. And I just spend 20 minutes leading old girl Donna to finally admit to me, yeah, I should sell the property. And then finally we can get into the actual like meat of the conversation and get into pricing and everything else, right? So there's a big piece there. But coming back to your center point of like what they would do with the money, like, we got to remember there's two types of motivation, right? Tony Robbins would say you're either running from pain or running towards pleasure. Oftentimes with our sellers, they're running towards pleasure at some level, right? And so like, what is pleasurable that they can do with their money? I always say all the time, like, we sell money for a living, right? Like, we literally sell money. When I'm training new closers, a lot of times I'll tell them, like, I want you to picture that you're going door to door with a backpack filled with as much money as you're offering every single time you make an offer to a property. Because so many times we feel guilty where we're like, oh, I'm only offering them $30,000 on their 60 grand property. And it's like, dude, if somebody rolled up to my house with a backpack that had 30 G's in it, and it was like a piece of dirt I'd never see, and you just like emptied it on my dining room table, I'd be like, dude, this is kind of sick. You know what I mean? So I come back to the place of like, we got to frame this stuff in a way of like, hey, what would you do if you had $30,000 on your dining table right now? Right? It's, I would go do this thing. How long have you wanted to go do this thing? Right? And there's like different paths we can go down. So yeah, totally agree with you there though, where we need to figure out like what's changed and where that motivation sits. And there's so many fun ways to do that.
Yeah. Love it. Ajay, do you have any like case studies of what you did to convince somebody to sell it when they didn't want to sell?
Man, so there's definitely a few fun ones in here. I would tell you like the most common would be when like people reach out to us and then it just becomes like a fake timing objection at some level, right? So like I had a guy that was like, yeah, like, I don't know, I thought I wanted to sell, but like, I don't really want to anymore, you know? And it's like, okay, well, like, hey man, can I follow up in 30 days? Yeah, sure, no problem. We get back on the phone. He's like, you know, I think I do want to sell, but I got to get through hunting season. Hunting season goes through, right? I get back on the phone with him the day after hunting season ends. And he's like, Ajay, honestly, like, I don't know. My wife's so attached to Florida. Like, she's still got a Florida ID. I don't know, and so and on a long cadence, I'll tell you, like, any objection that's not a price objection, you can close. Now, I don't know that you can close it that day or not. This guy I followed up with for 15 months, finally bought the deal at 240, sold it for 480 on the market just this past couple of months. So that was when we bought in January. I think we sold it in March or April, maybe April. But it was a sick deal, right? So it took 15 months of follow up. I would say more practically, the example I gave were quite literally this lady's name was Donna, where she was like, well, I don't know I don't know if I want to sell because I got to pay the taxes. Right. And that's one we hear a lot. Right. So you might get like a CPA or an attorney objection. Those are all like a fugazi is what I always say. Like, nobody actually needs to check with their CPA. I would walk them down to talk track where with Donna, I was like, well, Donna, let me ask you, are you just hoping that you never have to pay taxes when you sell with the property? Or like, what's kind of the end goal there? And she's like, well, no, I'm going to have to pay them eventually. I'm like, okay, well, Donna, can I offer up a perspective? Sure, go ahead. This one's risky depending on politics, y'all, but we're going to go for it. Like, well, Donna, with the current administration right now, taxes are probably going to be lower than they will be for a long time. And honestly, like, if I know anything from history, it's that it flips blue-red all the time, which means after Trump, we're getting somebody that's blue in there, which historically raises our income tax. So I can't promise you're never going to have to pay the taxes. But what I can tell you is if you wait much longer, you are going to have to pay more than you're going to have to pay now. So, I mean, knowing that, I mean, when does it make more sense for you to sell? And she's like, well, probably now. And I'm like, okay, well, if it makes more sense for you to sell now, where do we go from here? She's like, well, what's your offer? Boom, we're back in the sale, baby. Right? So you can see where we start going down. And this was one, it literally took me 20 minutes with this lady where she would like come back to just like some crazy places of just like, I just don't know if I can find a deal this good again. And I'm like, well, Donna, can I ask her, are you going to buy another piece of land? No. I'm like, okay, what would you buy instead? And like, you just got to be so patient with these people sometimes, but that's one where I had a lady who, said she wanted, I think it was like 110, something like that. And I talked her down to 70 on that call and talked her into selling that day. And the property was probably worth 140, 150, something like that. So a lot of times, like, again, there's such a patience in these leads. And I don't know about you, Ryland, but like when I see your pipeline, I'm like, dude, I just wonder how much money is sitting in there of like, and again, you guys crush. Like, I'm not bashing on your business model whatsoever. But I always have to wonder, just like when I see a pipeline like yours or like Michael Bowles, again, love Michael, dude's a savage, but like the guy's got even, I don't want to say less sales process. Like, I'm not trying to insult him, but like just from the frame of how deep he takes the leads, it's like, man, there's definitely deal flow in there. You know what I mean? And that's the stuff that keeps me up at night. So
I always tell everybody I would never get rid of my CRM because the amount of money that is sitting inside of that CRM is ridiculous.
Insane.
It's like, if all fails, if I have no operational cash to put it's like I just go in there and I hit the phones hard and I just go down the sales funnel with every single one of them. Because there's so many leads we just haven't spent enough time on. Totally. And I sacrifice that for scale because, in my opinion, if you have the money, if you want to inject more money into your business, just set like a little less criteria to disqualify leads and move on and just keep increasing that funnel. Whereas Ajay, like, he's a very quality oriented salesperson and he'll sacrifice a higher scale so that he can spend more time on the leads that come through on his CRM. It's like, I'm definitely sacrificing millions of dollars in my pipeline just so that I can run a higher scale and just talk to the leads that are more qualified instead of trying to convince them. But like, it's apples to oranges. It's like, if you want to spend more time, you're going to have a higher ROAS in your company. But there's going to be more man hours involved with each lead.
Totally. I will say too, I think there's so much of it where like at some level, the business mirrors the business owner, right? So like, not an insult to either one of us, but like your strengths have been in operational efficiency and delegation, whereas mine have been in sales training. You know what I mean? And so the business kind of mirrors that strength on the other end of like, well, it makes sense. You should build towards your strengths, Ryland. Like I always tell people, respectfully, you're not me. Now we can train you up and you can get good at sales, don't get me wrong, but like to sales manage at a level where you understand just take some like time and patience. And if you're not willing to invest that in your business, like you might just need to run a different model. You know what I mean? Like it's not a good or a bad thing. It's just like you should look at the facts of like what do you like in your business and really go down the rabbit hole of like how do you duplicate what you like? You know what I mean? I think you've done a phenomenal job of duplicating a business that doesn't pull you back into the weeds very frequently.
Correct. Yep.
Rylan's like, I know, dude, there were Jello shots when I woke up. That's a joke for everybody that got here on time. You would know if you were here at the beginning.
Yeah.
All right, here's the next question. What's next, Rylan?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go through the questions real quick before we move on to the next thing. So let's go through this. Matthew asked, does your mapping tool include a FEMA flood zone overlay? Yes. You can see it. This is the 100-year right here. And then we also have wetlands. Honestly, like in my opinion, I like to go off of wetlands. Flood zones, like some areas it can be good, some areas it can be bad. Like as we can see here, this is pretty swampy area. So like for Oklahoma, the flood zone's pretty good. Like, but if you're seeing properties consistently built in a flood zone, you might be fine. But I'm not seeing a whole lot built in flood zones in here. But there's areas.
Florida, people build.
Florida, yeah, a lot of it's flood zones, like Louisiana.
Yeah.
A lot of people are building in them. Sometimes, like even like Eastern North Carolina, they'll build up on stilts. If you've ever like driven out there, it's like it's still buildable. It's just everyone kind of adapts to their situation.
Even like Michigan, I've seen like closer to. There's so many lakes out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, near Houston. Good point, Gene. Rylan, we got a fun question in the chat that honestly opens up a can of worms here. Of how do you handle a call when they want fair market value? So I know you guys do some price disqualification on y'all's end. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. So what we do is our offer. So we do a lot of range offers. So generally it's 40 to 60% of market value. And keep in mind, my definition of market value is actually like quick sale value. It's like I said 4,500 an acre, but there were comps like this one that's a 10 acre. But there were comps like this one at 7,500 an acre.
Totally.
But like there might have been something here. So like we don't have information on that anymore. But some of these, they might have sat on the market longer, or there might have been an asset to that property that isn't on ours. So this one sat a while. This one sat 390 days.
Over a year. That's crazy.
Yeah. Whereas like when we look at stuff that sells cheaper, this one's 77 days. This one that was on market. Let's see. This one's 62 days. Like I'm only looking at our fast value of the property. That's my market value. So anyways, my market value, 4,500 an acre. So let's say we offered 40 to 60% of this. If they counter back within 50% of this top, so within 50% of this 163, so that's 163,000 times 1.5. If they counter anything above that value, we're just going to disqualify them and never follow up, probably. Whereas if they countered below that 1.5x of this, we're going to keep following up over and over and over again until they finally agree to it. And we're going to try to convince them. But some of these people are just like out to lunch with their offers. And you can sense that. And I train my sales team to sense that if they're just kind of like throwing out an offer. Like if you can sense that, maybe we will keep them on the line. But man, if they want 300 grand on this, I'm not a big fan, and I'll probably move on. Whereas Ajay, let's see what you're going to do in that situation.
So I've got a couple of different rules. I'll start by saying gosh, I'm trying to remember what this is called, but Charlie Munger invented this framework for business where essentially, if you want to see what the most important functions of a business are, you ask yourself, if I stopped these activities today, like what would be the fastest way to kill the business, right? And with a land flipping business, I mean, there's like three main pieces, right? I would stop marketing, I would start talking to my leads and making offers, and I would stop listing my properties for sale. Right? So like if I stop those three functions, is it fair to say my business would probably die? Yeah, definitely. Right? So most of us here don't struggle with that second piece. Typically, if we own a property, it's listed somewhere. If not, we need to sidebar because you're messing something up here. you know? But on the other side with our marketing and selling, right? So on a sales perspective, the question then I take it a layer deeper, right? So like what from a sales piece would I need to kill to stop getting deals, make offers? Okay, so how do I take that to the extreme? And it's either to make as many offers as possible or to make the best offers, right? So it's more and better are kind of our only frameworks that get us anywhere. So, okay, the reason I bring all this stuff up, and again, I'm a big frameworks guy. I talked a lot in frameworks on our first call, is when I look at this through the sales lens, right? My first question is like, what's my constraint in the business? Because I think, Rylan, when you share what your business is doing, what people who don't know you or your business intimately don't know is that you guys send out 625,000 text messages a month, right? So leads are not the constraint of your business. Deals are not the constraint of your business. So it makes a lot of sense to do what you're doing. I get the question of like, hey, if somebody wants market value, what do you do? And I'm like, well, let's look at your pipeline. And they're like, I had 22 leads for the month of August. Dude, quit being picky and get on the freaking phones. You either need to like quintuple your lead flow, right, at a minimum, or you need to go deeper with every single one of your leads. Because the reality is you don't get to be picky when you have a scarce resource, right? And so, yeah, in our business, we historically, like, here's my actual veto is I say if it's 3x market value, I probably won't call the lead. So like, let's pretend the property's worth, let's see, our offer is 50%. So this is worth like 270. So the guy came on and said he wanted 800 grand. I probably wouldn't call him back. Anything under that, I'd consider the call because I've had deals where the property's worth 30, the guy wants 60. We get on the phone, we close him at 12, buy the deal, sell it for 29. And so I think there are a lot of situations where people throw out crap numbers just to get you away. And the reality is when you get somebody on the phone and build a relationship with them, like it's a little bit of a wild card. The reality is 50% of Americans can't afford an unexpected expense of $500 or more in their day-to-day. And we sell money for a living, right? And so there's so much timing baked into this business where I'm just not going to disqualify a lead solely based on pricing unless they're just really firm. And even then, man, I'm going to take them through the process. Now, here's a caveat. If we have more leads than we have capacity for, price is our biggest deal killer. So I will say I will reverse engineer my outreach based on the highest probability of me doing the deal, which is based on price. Right. So I think what you guys have done really well is you've taken that to the extreme where leads are not a constraint. So we can be really picky and we're going to do that based on price because it's our biggest deal killer. Right. Yeah. And so I say all this to say, in practicality, here's what I recommend for people. If you're not tapped on bandwidth, talk to everybody. If you are tapped on bandwidth, we prioritize based on recency and urgency. So the more recently my lead came into the pipeline and the more urgent a lead led me to believe we could do business together, whether that's through pricing or whether that's through like, hey, my foot's on fire, I need money tomorrow, the odds of us doing those deals go up drastically, right? So I'm always going to hit leads way harder if they've given me a price I know I could do business in, right? But generally speaking, anything within 1.3x market value, so let's say it's worth 270, anything 350 or lower, like I'm not afraid to have a phone conversation with in terms of asking price. Like if they want 350 or less, I could probably turn that into like a 200, like deal closed more times than I can. Like, so I know that was a big rigmarole to get us to the answer here, but it's a differing philosophy just based on constraints of the business though, is what I would really point to.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, Ajay. It's like, I'll give you examples. I mean, probably the first 5 deals I ever did, I would never touch now. I made money from those deals.
Totally.
But I'm just looking for like the easiest pickings, like that make my process the easiest. I'm thinking about man hours generally. It's like I have a limited supply of man hours to attend to all these leads that's qualified based on price. But back in the day when I didn't have lead flow like that, you got to make it work with all your deals.
Totally.
Well, I'm not saying every single deal. If we're looking at, let's just look at a property that's horrible. Like this one right here. I mean, there's road access, but this is completely in a flood zone.
Yeah.
If you determine that it's not buildable at all, you either need to offer a ridiculously low value or just cut it off. Same for sloped properties. If it's just on a hillside like this and you can't imagine anyone ever building on it, forget about it. It's going to take you forever to sell that, even if you get it at a good value. Totally. So it's like, if it's a good property, if it's solid, if it's buildable, good shape, go for it. Even if they're out to lunch with their offer, if you don't have that lead flow. But if you have high lead flow, you gotta cut some off here and there.
I agree, man. I remember I had sent out a blind offer campaign. This was probably back in 2021. And I had hit Monroe County, Florida, which is like the Keys in Southern Florida, for those that don't know. And I had sent out a blind offer for like 60 grand on this 13 acres in the Keys. So I start doing DD, completely submerged underwater, like no dice, you know? And so I just get on the phone with the guy and I tell him that. I think his name was Adam or something. I was like, hey, Adam, dude, I'm looking at this, man, and I'm gonna be straight with you. Do you know these are underwater? He's like, I had no clue. I just inherited these from my dad. And I was like, well, dude, I'm like not going to pay 60 grand for a property I can't use. You understand that, right? He's like, totally. I mean, could you give me any money just to get this off my books? I'm like sick of getting the mail from the county. And I was like, I'd insult you, man. And he's like, insult me. And I was like, okay, I'd give you like 6 grand. And he was like, done. I was like, what? So I bought this 13 acres in the Keys, and I just can
we look at this?
Geez, dude, I'd have to go deep in the pipe to find it.
That's crazy. You offered in the Keys. I've never heard of anyone doing that.
It was wild, man. And I'll tell a quick side story. I went through a roller coaster on this deal because in the Keys, they have this thing called a rate of growth ordinance. Basically, Highway 1, the only highway that goes through, had gotten all this funding from the state, was supposed to get wider so that in the event of like a hurricane, people could get out of there quick. Well, the money never hit, corruption, blah, blah. And so they have to stop people moving there. And so they issue these building permits based on what they call ROGO points, which stands for rate of growth ordinance. You can get that by donating property, similar to like a conservation easement. And so those points sell for like 25 grand a point. And I had this evaluated privately, and somebody told me I might be able to get like 14 points for these properties. And so I was like, dude, this would be nuts if I made 300 grand plus. The county screwed me. Like I just went to the wrong person that day, and they ended up telling me like, absolutely not. Like you're not getting jack for this. And I was like, no. So I just threw it up on land.com and I sold the whole thing for like 30 grand to some guy in Turkey. I don't know why. I was like, dude, you like do your due diligence. You know this property sucks, right? And he was like, yeah, no, we like want to buy property in Florida. And I was like, okay, we're gonna close through title. Like he had a realtor involved. Like we paid her and they bought it. I cashed out. I mean, I 5x'd my money, so I'm really not complaining, you know, but I almost here. Let me see if I can find this real quick because it is actually wild. This is gonna be deep in the pipe.
I'll show you my first deal I did. It's a pretty funny one. I remember the APN by heart. That's how much I thought.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Let's see. Oh man, I'm like looking through the graveyard of deals. Oh man, I feel like these are too recent. I've like redone my Pebble board a few times. Oh shoot, is this it? No. Man.
My Wi-Fi's slow.
You guys don't have the that fast cable brouhaha where you're at?
No, we're in the boonies, so we have this Wi-Fi setup that like points at this dish that's on the mountain. So anytime it rains, our Wi-Fi gets cut off because the water cuts off the connection.
Oh geez, that's crazy. Hey, I just found the APN if you wanna.
Yeah, let's look at it.
Monroe County, Florida. So there were technically 6 parcels. Dude, this thing is literally like Check it out. It's actually kind of sick. Yeah, I literally gave this guy, it was like $6,000 or 6,500 or something, just like ridiculously cheap. And then I sold it in 2 chunks because there were like 5 little tracks and then like 1 big one. And so I feel like I sold one of the little ones for like $8,000 and the rest for like 25 is kind of how it played out. Is it popping up or no?
My Wi-Fi is so slow right now. Okay. All right. Do you have the APN?
I just dropped it in the chat.
Okay.
You see it in there? It's 00113360 and a bunch of zeros after. Yeah, boom, there it is. Boom. Okay, so you see that like mushy stuff right here?
Yeah.
That was my property, baby. So no joke, dude. It was like 13 acres. And then you see like up how there's a couple of these like what look like buildable lots right under the houses towards the right of where your cursor is right now. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
So I owned 5 of those and then like 12 acres in this underwater section right here. And man, it was nuts. We like sat on these things for like a year before they actually sold. But yeah, that was a funny deal.
I've eaten right here before.
Have you actually?
Yeah. I used to spend a lot of time out here when I lived in Fort
Okay, so so I was hoping somebody almost bought it that was like a coral reef like person. And then I almost had a beekeeper buy it a little bit later. Like it was, you got the most random like leads from this property because it was just all like underwater.
Yeah. I mean, it was above water at some point and then the ocean rose.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks.
That's for the most part like what you'll see in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Like
oh, really?
Everything beachfront 50 years ago is underwater.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then yeah, this was my deal that I sold. I put it under my name. And then yeah, that was my purchase price. Then I sold it for 30 and this person planned on flipping it herself.
What?
Like, oh, I'm gonna buy it and I'm gonna resell it. I was like, go for it.
It doesn't look like she did too good of a job, Rylan.
Completely landlocked. Let's see what they're worth now.
This is crazy. That's a pretty good deal, man. 2 months, you flipped it from 13 to 30. I'd do that.
Yeah, I was hustling Facebook.
Marketplace was the place when you didn't have money, man.
Yeah. I mean, they're still selling around 30, but
yeah, that's tough. I mean, she could sell it on owner finance if she wanted to and probably make someone interest.
yeah, if you hit Facebook hard enough. But it's like nowadays, I would never buy that deal.
Oh, God, no. Yeah,
There's
especially
no access. Maybe there is. I don't know what this whole thing is. I think that's actually a road. I don't know.
It's so hard to know because people like go out there with like their dune buggies and stuff and like.
Yeah. All right. Anyways, let's jump into the framework of making an offer. So let's say we had that first call, got to know a little bit about the person, got to know if they liked the offer that we originally sent, if we did send one. So basically, like my framework is, hey, what did you think about, this is the first call. Hey, what did you think about the offer that we sent? Does that sound like a good offer to you? Are you going to accept that? I just need this information before I send this off to my team. Hear them out. If they counter, you guys know my criteria. You guys know Ajay's criteria. So we'll go into that second call. So this is when we comp a little harder. This is when we look for negotiation points, right? So between that first call and that second call, we have time. I'm going to put my camera back on. But when we have that time before the first and second call, we need to go deep and we need to figure out anything that we can go off of to drop that value. So if we offer too high, we need to renegotiate. I'm going to write notes that the water well is a good negotiation point. I'm also going to go deeper into the comps. I would look at that physical properties that sold, all the comparables, to really identify what we think it could be worth. If you have no comps to go off of as well, you could call a realtor at this point. I'm not saying that's the best thing to do if you have a good supply of comps. I like to just get the deal signed. I like to be very quick. But if you really have no idea, maybe you think it could be worth way more than what comps are showing as well. Maybe it's a commercial property. You could call a realtor at that point. But don't let it bite into that time where you have somebody on the hook, because you don't want to spend too much time getting to that person with a finalized offer. Ideally, you should come to that second call within 24 hours of that first conversation. If you don't, it's really bad. You're going to lose him. He's probably not going to pick up. So again, I'm taking notes, going in that call, have my negotiation points if I need to, and then ideally try to lock up a purchase agreement on the phone. So Ajay, I'm curious if you want to go first, kind of your framework for that second call.
Totally. So I know we talked about a slight difference between like property versus person focus on call 1 versus call 2. So on this call, I'm really going to get focused on like who the human is and why they want to sell, right? The way I do that is I've got a whole framework for my sales calls, but always going to start with a good opener, right? So like making sure I can stay on the phone. I mentioned on this first webinar that most of these conversations die either within the first like 45 seconds or right around our first offer. So I'm like reverse engineering for how do we make sure those things don't happen. And first little bit, it might be like, hey, Rylan, it's Ajay. Did I catch you at a bad time? Sweet. And then we insert what I call our frame, which is where we like hit the agenda for the call. Hey, man, so I'm reaching out about your 20 acres in, what is this, Muskogee County, Oklahoma. I don't know what county we're in. I just made one up. Lincoln. Okay. Lincoln County, Oklahoma. I know you chatted with James on my team. Just wanted to ask a few more questions before jumping into an offer. You got 10 minutes to chat, right? And he's going to say, yeah, sure. Go ahead. Then we get into like my framework is typically like a past, present, future is how I would lay it out. And I learned that from one of my old sales trainers, Jenny Hudspeth, where basically you start in the past, right? So, hey, I see you've owned this property for 24 years. What was going on 24 years ago? Try to get the story, right? Well, hey, I mean, Rylan, gosh, you interacted with our mailer, text message, cold call, whatever, right? Hey, I know you talked to James before this. I mean, was this something you've been thinking about selling for a while or what's changed, right? And then, you know, I've got all these little like quips that we do throughout our process, but I'm just going to go through like high level process. Otherwise I'll go down a rabbit hole on scripting. I could spend like 3 hours on scripting. I love that stuff. But start in the past, then present, and then it's the future of like, well, we're on the phone. So it sounds like those plans have changed. You know, can I ask, what are you guys looking to do in the future? Basically, right? Hey, we're on the phone, so it seems like you've been wanting to sell for a while. How long have you been thinking about selling? 3 months. What happened 3 months ago? Got it. So you're hoping to sell the property so you can take some money, pay off medical debt. Oh, man. Okay. Makes sense. After that, we get into like deal killer objection eliminators is what I would call them. So like there's 4 types of objections. Price is obvious. Certainty, timing, partner, spouse. These last 2 are really easy to isolate before we talk about price. So I'll ask some easy questions like, hey, and is there anybody else on the deed, Rylan, or is it just you? Oh, okay, you got a wife on the property, got it. And does she know we're having this conversation, or are you on like a secret mission right now? No, okay, she knows. So you guys have talked about, you know, you're aligned in terms of when you'd sell and what you'd sell for. Okay, got it. And that way, later on in the call, if he hits me with like, I need to talk to my wife, like, oh, Rylan, I'm a little surprised, man, because you said earlier that like you guys had already talked about this. So can I ask, like, people tell me that for 1 or 2 reasons, either because they're just too polite to tell me no on the price, or number 2, there's something they didn't tell me earlier. Can I ask which one it is, right? So like you can kind of play with it. But partner, spouse, timing, hey, is anything stopping you from selling in the next 30 to 90 days? No? Great. Then we get into our pitch. Hey, Rylan, we're the bee's knees. We work awesome. No closing costs, no realtors, blah, 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 that whole bit. And then I finally get into my offer. And sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but the actual offer is where I talk about shifting blame as much as possible, because you can't hang up when it's not me, right? So like I'd say, hey, Rylan, I'm seeing investors in the area are paying between $40,000 and $60,000 for properties like these. What would you say to an investor if they made an offer like that? And it's not me. So my biggest thing I'm looking for is feedback. It's always really funny when I'm training new sales reps, because the question I get a lot is they're like, hey, man, people don't like when I drop that a lot of times. I'm like, yeah, like no shit. You know, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make deals, right? And so the biggest thing I'm looking for is feedback on where the seller really is on pricing. And then I've got a whole process for negotiating where I got to get an asking price out of my seller, loop them off their price, and then tie them down once I think we're at a price. We isolate the objection, and then we like push to actually get the agreement signed more often than not. Now, obviously, you're going to get more no's than yeses, but high level, within 5 minutes, that's like our quick and dirty framework for our offer call. And those typically take anywhere between like, I'd say 8 minutes on the low end. I typically like to see about 10 up through like, 20 to 30 minutes on the longer end.
Yeah. Our conversation is basically identical to that. So I really don't have any input on that. We're kind of following.
Easy to say that, Rylan. He's like, yeah, man, we do the same thing. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, bro. Me too.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you crap.
Now, one important thing I want to bring up that a lot of people mess up on is when they accept an offer, and it's an offer that you're willing to go after, you need to send that purchase agreement right on the call. You need to have your system in place to send that on the call.
Totally.
And the reason I say this is, like Ajay brought up, the two biggest or like points where you lose the conversation is the first 45 seconds or when you make an offer. Another third one could be when they read that purchase agreement without you. If they read that purchase agreement without you, they're going to be in the dark and they're going to start thinking all red flags, all negative things, and you're not there to help them in that situation. So them reading that on their own without you being present, they're going to lose rapport with you and they're going to start thinking negatively of you. So it's important you have that purchase agreement sent to them and you have that purchase agreement pulled up with them on the phone so that you can review every clause in that purchase agreement. It's very important you review the whole purchase agreement with them on the phone right after they accepted that offer so that nothing else is brought up from there. You don't need to bring up anything else. That's the whole process. All you need to do is sign at this point, and it's just follow up from there. Totally. You stood in front of that purchase agreement. If you stand in front of that purchase agreement and review it with them, that shows that you're confident in that and you're not hiding anything, right? Because a lot of these people, like, they're always looking for red flags, and if they think you're hiding something, they're going to believe it. So it's good to stand in front of that so that your third call, your fourth call, your fifth call, it's all follow up. Hey, you already saw that purchase agreement. We already went over it with you. All you need to do is sign and we'll start from there.
Totally. And if I could just add one thing, like the key, because so many people get like their buttholes pucker when they hear like, oh, I got to get them to sign live, you know? And the reality is, man, like, just don't make it a big deal. You know, it's only a big deal if you make it a big deal. So if you're like, hey, Rylan, if it's okay with you, man, we're going to go through this agreement. Like, if you get weird about it, people are going to be like, yeah, no, dude, it's a no for me, dog, right? Like Randy Jackson in American Idol. And so on the flip side of that, if you're just like, hey, Rylan, typically our process here is that we're just going to go through the agreement together. You mentioned you're at home, so I'm assuming you got a computer nearby. Could you open that up right now? Right. And you just like walk them through the next steps. So don't make it a big deal, and people will more often than not just like comply with process. And if you sense friction, like don't be like a weird scammer about it. Just like acknowledge it. If they're like uncomfortable, but like, okay, hey man, I heard that in your breathing there or whatever. Like, there's something here that you've got a question about. What can I answer? Right. Like acknowledge it, you know, and just like continue to go through the steps here. Right. But such a good point, Rylan, of like from a sales process perspective, our goal is to get an agreement signed. Right. So like push to that as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And I always tell my salespeople there's two hurdles in the business. Your first hurdle is the price. Your second hurdle is the purchase agreement. So you want to get those hurdles close together so that there's no time between red flags. You want to handle all the red flags as closely together as possible. And if you handle it closely, you have timing in between those, or less timing in between those, it's more likely it's going to get signed.
Totally.
Yeah. Cool. David just asked, are there replays of these calls? Yes, everything's being recorded. The first call, if you register for the webinar before the first call, you should have got that recording. Otherwise, we'll be sending these out after each call. So if you didn't receive that, you can also email hello@landinsights.co and they'll send it to you. If for some reason you didn't receive that. So I just put that email in there. Also, I think Ajay will be posting these inside his groups as well, if you guys are in Ajay's groups.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They'll be in school. So if you're not in school, I know I dropped the link. Ari asked me to last time. I've got a free community here. And then I have a paid group as well for people that want me to do sales training for their teams, basically. But join the free group in the least. We post a bunch of stuff in there, and there's like a whole mini course on sales, my scripts, lead manager scripts, closer scripts, flowcharts, process, KPI sheets, all the things. So go in there and hop in. Rylan, I did see a question too of how do you overcome a cancellation clause? Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
So keep in mind, so there's only 4 types of objections, right? That one would basically be some level of certainty is the biggest thing, right? So like certainty/trust. They're worried they're not going to get their desired outcome, right? Which is to sell the property for the price you agreed to and get their money, essentially. So when I hear like, hey, why do you guys have the right to cancel, but like I'm not protected? I'd be like, well, totally, Rylan. I understand where you're coming from, man. You know, would it be okay if I explained our process a little bit, right? So permission-based question into education, right? And then I'm going to get into the reason we've got to have that clause in there is because, you know, things change as we sink our teeth into. I've had tons of properties where the title comes back and it's not as clean as we had thought, or there's junk on the property, you know, there's things on the property we couldn't have planned for. You know, Rylan, it's really just in there to protect us. But can I ask, I mean, is there any reason you think that there's anything messed up with the property, either with the title or with it physically? Like, no, it's perfectly fine. I'm like, okay, man, as long as that's true, shouldn't be an issue. Like, we only really cancel on properties when one of those things is messed up, which is true. Like, if I evaluated the property wrong, it was because there was a variable that I didn't see that was there until later. And I'm going to tell them that when we go back to reoffer, and then if they're not down, then cancel. You know, it's like, dude, you've got tires all over your property. I can't buy this thing. Hey, like, you're on the other side of the river and the school zones are meth country. Like, we can't, like, I'm sorry, this is different than we had thought. You know, so it's only ever if we find something in due diligence that causes us to change. But I always come back to the language of like, oh, do you know if there's anything wrong with the property that would make us cancel? And if the answer is no, it's like, okay, well then we shouldn't have an issue. Do you have any other questions? Just like move on, right? It's only a big deal if you make it a big deal.
Yeah. And honestly, guys, like, you need to go through your purchase agreement and you need to have these things drafted out. Like, you need a script for yourself and you need to live and breathe that script, especially if you're on the phones, and understand how to handle each objection. Because for the most part, it's all the same objections you get every single time. So if you have a really good script written out and it's finally just baked into your head, you can just riff on that and it just sounds natural, right? But if you slip up, you stumble over your words, it shows a red flag. So you need to know this by heart. And if you have salespeople, your salespeople need to know this by heart. Yeah. And one thing we did in our business earlier this year that hurt us is we started giving the ability for our lead managers to send purchase agreements, and they weren't as trained up on how to handle these objections, and our sign rates closed, or our sign rates dropped significantly. So we ended up going back to that framework of lead manager to closer.
It really does make a difference. Really does. I know we're past the top of the hour too. So Rylan, is it cool if I plug the event again real quick?
Yeah.
Sweet. So I know some people are dropping, but if you don't know, here in 2 weeks, September 19th and 20th, we are throwing our event in Dallas. Land Insights is one of our sponsors, so they will be there. You'll get to shake hands with Ari. Unfortunately, Rylan will be out in Bali, so he won't be there, but Ari and plenty of the team will, which will be awesome. 2-day event where we're going to be talking land and some curative title. It's going to be sick. I've got some awesome speakers lined up. We've got, I think, we're shooting for like 175 in the room, and we're getting pretty close. So I would highly recommend, if you're on the fence of coming, like, fill that out. I think we've got a discount code for everybody here too. It is LIA 100. It's my bad for making it LIA instead of LI. I always get them mixed up because they're like one letter different, you know, and very related. But yeah, would love to see everybody that's here out there. I know a ton of you are already signed up for the event. It's gonna be sick. I am really pumped for it. This is the biggest we've done it yet. And we've got such a strong community that it's going to be fun. But Land Scaling Summit, baby, here in Dallas, come through.
I approve this message. Well, honestly, guys, like, there's a big difference between these online events versus the in-person events. Usually my biggest takeaways in the situations where I implement new strategies in my business tend to come from the events. That's usually where I get the most knowledge. It's like, I remember Ajay speaking, I think it was 2023. It was Dallas. Yeah. A lot of my sales framework and what I implemented came from Ajay's speech.
Yeah, Rylan would be broke if it wasn't for me, guys. I'm just kidding. No, that's huge, man. Thank you, though. That means a lot. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
That was a fun presentation. I think it was one of the first ones I ever gave on any level of sales process, and like, I didn't realize how needed it was in the industry too at the time. So it was that was a fun one, man. It was a really good room.
Yeah, and it's like, I know you've been involved in a lot of masterminds outside land, whereas a lot of people aren't.
Totally.
And it's like, there's so much to learn from the people that have been in wholesaling for a decade. Like, the land flipping business, it's so new, and it's a cowboy business. Nobody really knows what they're doing. There's no proven strategy. But when you're in industries where it's ultra competitive, like house wholesaling, like, you need everything to your advantage to win. So it's like when you implement those strategies into a cowboy business, that's when you stand out.
Totally. I want to add too, man, I've learned from the house wholesale industry, the life insurance industry, the solar industry, high ticket info products, like the sales across all these different marketing and sales businesses, a little bit on the roofers. I don't know as many of them super well, but people in those industries just have like sharp sales processes. And I've gone down lots of rabbit holes learning from different people in different niches and just like brought everything back that I've learned that actually works in this niche. So it's fun getting to like stress test things because I've got stuff that I've used that like totally bombs and then other stuff that like hits really, really well. And I get to test at scale with like both myself, my team, and then my entire community, you know? So it's really fun stuff, man. But I totally agree. Like I've been a part of tons of real estate and then overall just like sales masterminds where it is so fun bringing business context from other places. I'm sure you guys have you've learned stuff on the SaaS side that you've brought back to the land side where you're like, wait, why are we not doing this in our land biz at some level? Yeah. Like there's just these like parallels in business overall that you just learn and you realize you're like, man, why is nobody doing this? Like it makes so much sense, you know?
Yeah. I mean, every business is related in some way and you can take something away from each business. It's literally just marketing, sales, capital, strategy. I don't know.
Cash, a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
But anyways, I just wanted to go over one last thing, and then I'll let you guys go. But follow-up, I just want to stress the importance of follow-up. As you guys know, I disqualify leads a lot, but my qualified leads, they go through rigorous follow-up. And the reason why we do this and the reason why we make so much money from follow-up, I'd say about 50% of our deals, maybe a little more, come from follow-up. And that's just because everyone's financial situation changes over time. Like we brought up earlier in the call, one person may have a lot of money 1 month, 6 months later, they may go broke or they need to purchase something or they have a medical expense like that comes up. So you want to keep them in your pipeline as long as possible. And basically like that first call is just planting the seed. You're coming to them from a remote setting, offering them money. That's planting a seed, and they start kind of spending that in their brain. If something comes up, they think of you. And if you're consistently following up without them having to reach out, that's just more incentive for them to work with you. So that's kind of where I want to leave it off. Ajay, did I miss anything there?
No, if I could just add one thing, I would say like on the front end, when a lead's like hot in the sense that they've like opted into our marketing, the way I like to think about it, and you guys will notice I have like funny isms and examples, but I always say like you have to minimize the amount of times a seller eats, sleeps, and poops because you're thinking about something different before and after every single one of those activities. So every single time that occurs in a seller's life, they're thinking about you a little bit less realistically, especially if you're using some form of telemarketing, like texting or cold calling or whatever, which is pretty common these days, versus like direct mail. At least you're a mail piece, and like that's auto like marketing in the sense that it's physical, it's in front of them, it's on a dining table or a fridge. Whereas like you don't get that with a text message. Like if I asked you who the past 10 people who texted you were, you probably wouldn't be able to tell me, right? What about the last 10 people that called you? Probably not, right? So we're like forgotten about much quicker. So that's where that follow-up on the front end is so aggressive with the double and triple dials for several days on the front end. And on the back end, to your point, like following up for a long time when it's not a price objection and asking for permission when there is a timing issue of like, hey man, is it cool if we follow up in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days or whatever, so that when that car breaks down or a hospital bill comes up or whatever, and we can give them liquidity for a fairly illiquid asset, well then sweet, like this is awesome. We get to help people and like we make money along the way the same way like a car dealership does, except we're less scammy. So that's kind of the center point there. But yeah, man, all good points, Rylan.
Sweet. All right, guys. I'm not seeing any more questions, so I guess we can leave it off there.
If you're serious about flipping land for predictable profit and you want to plug into the exact system our students are using to close their first deal or their next 10 deals, then tap the video right here. It's a free 15-minute strategy call where we're going to pull back the curtain and show you the exact LIA system that our students are using right now. We'll show you the entire process A to Z on how you can start landing deals in the next 90 days or less. Slots tend to fill up fast. Grab your spot now. And I look forward to showing you the exact LIA land flipping playbook that I've been using for the last 6 years and that nearly 500 other LIA members have used today. Click it and I'll see you inside.